welcome to Learn Free Music Theory, lesson number 38. Woohoo! So, today's lesson is going to be about dominant seventh and diminished seventh chords. So we're going to talk about the seventh chords. And that's basically it. It's not going to be that challenging of a lesson. It's going to introduce a couple new things, but not too much, just building on the last stuff that we've been doing in the last couple lessons. So pretty easy. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Alright, so here's our first topic. So what is a dominant seventh? Alright, well I'm going to explain that to you right now. Okay, so say we're in the key of C major. Ta-da! C major. Okay, so now what is a dominant? Oh, I think it's the fifth note of a scale. So if we're in C major and we go tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, we're in the dominant. Okay, so now the dominant of C major, the dominant chord would be, well, it starts on G, so it's G, B, D. So that's our dominant chord. Now, what are those, like what would we call those? We'd call the G the first, or the root. We'd call the B the third, and we'd call the D the fifth, because of how far they are away from the G, the root of the chord. So one is G, and then you go up to A, which is 2, and then B is 3, C would be 4, and then D is 5. Okay, so that's where you get the 1, 5, 3, or the first, the root, the third, and the fifth. Those are called the third, the fifth of the chord. Okay, so now when we add a seventh to it, now we're adding another note to the chord, because before we only had the first, the third, and the fifth. So now we add the seventh. So the seventh is another third above, so you're doing the same sequence, you're just skipping a note each time, right? Because you're going G, skip A, go to B, skip C, go to D, and then skip E, and then go to F. So that's on the seventh, you have F. So F is added to the chord of the dominant chord, and that becomes a dominant seventh. Okay? Now, the dominant chord isn't like some special chord that it's the only one in the entire world that can actually have a seventh. Actually, all of these chords can have sevenths. They can have ninths, they can have 11ths. They just keep going up. Now, those are more uncommon. Those are not more uncommon, they're less common. Should be grammatically correct here. So yeah, basically, these are just the most common seventh chords that you're going to run into, so that's why we teach them first. That's pretty much it. So a seventh chord, what is its function? What does it do? Why do we have them? Well, think of it like a spice or flavor. It adds more flavor to the chord and gives it a kind of a new feeling. And in harmony, we use the seventh to destabilize the chord to push it back to the tonic. So remember in our perfect cadences, the 5 goes back to the 1. So in this, basically, the F is going to help give it more flavor, and also it's going to help drive it back to the home key. So you see it a lot in like a perfect cadence where it's going 5 to 1. So you throw in the 7 there, boom, it pushes you towards the tonic. So it's not like you have to go to the tonic, because music is creative, right? You can do kind of whatever you want, but that's the purpose, or that's one of the purposes or uses of the seventh chord in the dominant chord, of course. So hopefully that explains it. So basically the dominant chord is just, so if you just take the 5 chord, it's just G, B, D in C major. Of course it changes in other keys, right? And then if you want to make it a dominant seventh chord, then you add the F on the top. Now, okay, so that's how we got the name dominant seventh. This is what it actually looks like. You draw a 5 for the dominant, so the 5 chord, and then, so that's your dominant 7. So you can also call it a 5-7 chord. So 5-7, all right? Pretty simple. So you see that 5 and that 7, so that means you're going to add the 7 to the 5 chord. And if you see 5-7, then it's automatically in the 5-3 inversion. Okay, so it's automatically going to be G, B, D, F, or at least G on the bottom, okay? Because we have chord numbers for 7 chords. Now, when you introduce another note, there's more combinations. So now you have a root, a first, a second, and a third inversion. Because before we only had a root and a second inversion. But now that we have another note, it's another possibility that we can cycle through. So we have to add that in. And so now we also have different intervals between the notes. So now we have to change the numbering to it to accommodate it. But here's the good news. This one's actually really, really easy to remember if you do it in a certain way, which I'm going to show you. Unless all you have to do is pay me $569.69. No, I'm kidding. I'm just going to show you for free. Okay, so chord numbers. Basically, 5, 7 is our starting one. Now, what is 2 numbers down from 7? 6, 5. And if you keep counting down, 4, 3. And then the last one, I like to just omit this one in my head and then just say 2. So I go 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And that's how I remember what the interval, like what the chord numbers are for those, the 5 or the 7th chord kind of layout. Okay, so this is sort of how it looks. As you can see in the 5, 7, they're all stacked, like a super tall snowman with 4 snowball things. And then in the 6, 5, you have the 2 really jammed in close up together. And then here you have the 4, 3, and it's kind of getting now closer down into the middle. And then on the third inversion, it's the kind of cluster has worked its way down to the bottom. And then if you go to the next one, then it will be all back to root position again. I guess if you really want to like visualize why it's clustering is because what if I move the G up to here? Okay, so now I have a G and an F and they're really close together because they're only 1 note apart, whereas these ones are still a third apart. So that's where you get that cluster there. So imagine this is the G and now it's moved up here. Okay? And then now you move, so this is the G and this is the F, and so now you move the B up here. So the B's up here, B, G, F, and D. I had to think for a second there. But yeah, so that's how that thing's moving around. So that's your basic thing for 7th chords. So just remember 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And then the 4 goes on top of the 2. Now remember when I was showing you 5, 3, 6, 3, and then 6, 4 for the 3 different inversions. So the root, the first, and the second for your basic triad. Well, you can actually, just like you can take out the third, you know how you can go 5, 3, 6, and then 6, 4? You can sort of sometimes take out this 4 here, right there. So you could put that in brackets. You don't always have to draw it because if you see 5, 2, you kind of know what it is. But anyway, yeah, you can always put the 4 in just if you want to be more exact and more precise. So there you go. So it's 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. That's how I remember it. Works like a charm. Okay, so that's a dominant 7th. And one last thing. Okay, whenever you're in the minor key, so if I was in, I didn't want to put C minor because I'd run into that problem with the whole B natural thing again. So I picked a different key. So I picked D minor. So in D minor, the 7th note is D. Oh, well, I'll just shorten this up. So the 7th note is C, okay? The 7th note is C, so we have to raise it up in the harmonic, okay? And whenever you're writing chords and stuff like that, they're pretty much always going to be assumed that it's in the harmonic mode where you're raising the 7th up because you're creating harmony, unless otherwise specified. Okay, so the 7th note is C, so we have to raise it up to C sharp. Now it won't be in the key signature because the only thing in D minor's key signature is a B flat. So we need a C sharp actually written in. If you're writing, you know, the D minor, whatever, dominant 7th, it's going to have C sharp in there, okay? You have to make sure that you write it in every time, unless you're writing it multiple times in the same bar and the sharp carries over. But just remember that you're going to have to watch out for that leading tone, okay? All right. And that does apply for not just the dominant seventh, because as you can see, the seventh is the G. So anytime you write the dominant chord in minor key, you're always going to be running into the problem of raising that dominant, the leading tone up. Okay, so that should probably be enough on the dominant seventh, so let's move along. Okay, so now here's another seventh chord. Now, just like I said in the last one, any number could be a seventh chord, so now we're going to investigate another common seventh chord, and this one is called the diminished seventh, okay? Now, you remember, it's sort of like its nickname. You remember how in the chart that we were talking about, if you go up a major scale, the seventh note, so if you're on B, so if you're in C major and you go C, D, E, F, G, A, and you get to B over here. So if you get to B, so B, D, F, remember? That was our chord in the seventh chord, and it was a diminished chord. It was the diminished seventh, okay? Now, that's what we call it, but you can actually make the 7 chord it's already diminished and it's a 7 chord, and then you can make it into a 7th chord, which kind of sounds kind of weird because it's already the 7th chord, but now you're making it 7th. Oh man. Okay, but yeah, so I'll just explain. Okay, so as you can see, the actual name for it is this, the 7 diminished 7. By the way, there's this one time, it just reminded me when I put the th at the end, there's this one time I was looking through this forum or whatever, and then there's this geek computer forum, and they're all like, oh, does anyone speak the Python computer? Well, they said there's a computer programming language called Python, and so they want to know, I guess they wanted to know how to speak Python. So someone's like, does anyone on here know how to speak Python? And then the next reply is someone types in P T H S T H H H H ... like oh man, I just cracked up so hard when I read that, and the guy's like, yeah, thanks. But yeah, so anyway, kind of a side joke there, but anyway. So the actual name of this is 7 diminished 7. That's literally what it's called. So we get that because it's the 7th. It's the 7th. It's because there's all these 7s going on. Okay, so it's the 7th chord in the actual going up. So it's the 7th Roman numeral chord. And then you're adding the 7th onto it, just like we did the dominant 7th. So this is the 7th diminished 7th, because it's automatically a diminished chord. Now, the reason you have a 7th chord, okay, so it's on the 7th degree of the scale, okay, and basically it's going up, and then on the top you've got an A flat, and that is your 7th. Now, why do you have to put the A flat there? Well, because if you're having a diminished chord, you need all minor thirds, okay? So here, a dominant 7th chord is built like this. Major third, minor third, minor third. A diminished 7th chord is minor third, minor third, minor third, okay? It's always like that. So minor third, minor third, minor third, and dominant is major third, minor third, minor third. Okay? It's a lot. If you take this side off, actually wait, never mind. That's not exactly at all like the major and minor, so forget about that. Just remember diminished is all minor, and dominant is with a 1 major and then 2 minors at the end of it. Okay, so if you look, that's minor, from B to D is a minor third, from D to F is a minor third, and from F to A flat is a minor third. Okay, so now, one other thing, or 2 other things. Now, they actually have the same chord numbers as the other 7th chord. Whoa, what do you know? So it's 7 diminished 7. So never forget to write the diminished sign, because if you don't write it, then you're not really writing the proper terminology for the chord, because it is a diminished chord. So here, 7 diminished 7, okay, 7 diminished 6 5, 7 diminished 4 3, 7 diminished 4 2. So again, it's the 7 6 5 4 3 2. There you go. Now those are just going to be in the same pattern, so you just stick the bottom one up top or whatever, right? You're just going up the inversions. Now diatonic semitone below is how you're going to find your basically diminished 7th. So if someone says, play me or find me the diminished 7th of C, okay, all you do, what's the difference between C and B? It's one diatonic semitone below. I actually was going to write diatonic, but I forgot until I finished here, and then I was like, I'm not even going to erase it, I'll just write it above. So, so a diatonic semitone, remember it's a different letter name, but it's a whole semitone, it's just one semitone apart, with just two different names. So B to C, that's a diatonic semitone. So you go one semitone down from whatever key that you wanted, and then you just build your diminished 7th on that. So let's do another key for an example. Okay, so say G. Okay, so take G for example. Okay, so you're on G. What's the diatonic semitone below? You go to F sharp. So you'd go F sharp to A to C to D sharp. And that would be, I'm pretty sure that is C. Well, I guess it wouldn't be D sharp, it'd probably be more like E flat, because otherwise then that's a second and that wouldn't really look right. Yeah, anyway, so because you want to build it on thirds, right? So if you're on F sharp, you'd be F sharp, A, C, and then E flat, and that would be your diminished 7th if you wanted the diminished 7th of G. So see, you go to the 7th degree of G, or the back doorway is because if G is already your root, if you just slip one semitone behind, you're already at the 7th note, right? Because if you're going forwards and it's like 1 2 3 4, but behind you is 7, you can just go back 1 and then you're at 7 instead of counting 7 ahead. So that's the whole idea. You just slip one semitone back, and then you build your triad, or not your triad, your chord with this pattern. So you go minor, minor, minor. So minor third, minor third, minor third. Boom, there you go. You've got a diminished 7th. Ta-da! Done. And so, again, it just follows the same rules of inversions. They just go over. So, I think that pretty much explains diminished and dominant 7ths. So one other quick thing about diminished 7ths, which is kind of an interesting thing, is that there's only 3 in the entire existence. There's only 3. That's it. There's only 3 diminished 7th chords, because when you take, for some reason they overlap each other. So what happens is, if you take the diminished 7th of C, it's actually also the diminished 7th of E. It's because they share the same notes. So all you do is you just move up to the next inversion, and then now you're in the next diminished 7th chord, which is kind of interesting. So if you learn the 3 different patterns of note groups for those diminished 7th chords, then you know all of them. And you're probably thinking, whoa, Andrew, just chill out. I don't want to know all this stuff. And it's kind of okay. This is a little bit hardcore when I'm going into all this extra detail, but this is basically diminished 7ths and 7th chords, and that basically should help you along and make you aware of what is going on. So let's get on to homework now. Homework. No. Okay guys, so for your homework, what I want you to do is draw 10 dominant 7th chords. So pick 10 different keys, draw that one dominant 7th chord in every single inversion that it can be in. So, and then I want you to write underneath like dominant 7 or 5/7 of whatever key that you're drawing it in, and then go dominant, then 5/6/5, and then 5/4/3, and then 5/4/2. So that way you're getting used to drawing the chord numbers underneath and then show the different inversion. So do that for 10 dominant sevenths. And by the way, the dominant sevenths, there's more than 3 of them, sadly. So you just have to think of whatever major scale you're going to be in, and then go into the 5th note of that major scale, and then build your chord off of that using the major third, minor third formula. Okay, now underneath that, or the next one I guess I should say is, I want you to do 10 diminished seventh ones, chords, and draw those out. And I don't draw them out in all the inversions just the same way. Do the same thing that you did with the dominant seventh, so write out the different inversions and then put in the chord numbers underneath. And then maybe take 5 or 4 or maybe 5 of some of those ones and then convert those into close chords. So, you know what? That's stupid. In open is retarded. Okay, I want you to draw them in close, and I want you to convert 5 to open. Okay, that makes way more sense. Well, I just started thinking about that. I'm just like, why would you want to draw them in open if you're trying to learn them? That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, so draw them in close and then convert them to open. So convert like 5 or so to open. And that should be good. Okay, so I hope you guys found that lesson not too confusing. And we're going to be switching gears in the next lesson. So hope you enjoy that. Hope you enjoyed this one too. And hope everything's going well with you. Take care and have fun and enjoy your homework. Have a good one. Bye-bye. See you in the next lesson.